So I think we'll get started. Thank you very much for joining the webinar today. So firstly, just to introduce myself. So I'm Sophie Howe. I'm CEO of Comtech. I've worked in the localization industry, for a very long time, supporting global companies scaling, working internationally, and particularly worked with software and SaaS teams around localization and scaling their localization efforts. So we're going to look at how SaaS and software teams can really leverage all the translation technology available to really scale their localization efforts. Comtech has always invested very heavily in technology. We've been a strong believer in bringing together the very best of modern translation tools with expert human linguistic skills. That combination is what really gives teams both the speed and the quality, and it's quality that is so important. It's what we hear time and again. It's so important to build the trust and the loyalty in your customer base as you grow and scale globally. So we're going to look at all the different areas within translation technology. We'll cover automation, connectors, machine translation, and smart workflows that can help teams to move faster, keep the quality consistent, and of course manage the cost. And we know and very, very much appreciate how important it is to get the return on your investment in your budget, as in some cases those budgets are getting that bit tighter, and but the need for localization continues and grows. And finally, don't worry, I'll share at the end slides and a recording as well. So to get started, let's first look at some of the challenges that can come up around localization for SaaS software and SaaS companies. First, the volume and type of content you are working with is always changing and increasing, and what we hear from our clients increasing substantially. I've shared a graph there that just shows the sheer volume of data that's being produced in the world today, and how much that is growing. What it's saying is that we will be creating, capturing, and replicating more data in the next 3 years than we've done in human history. So that kind of chimes very well with what we're hearing from our clients around their increasing content requirements. And of course, as your product grows, which is of course what we all want, with that comes more content, more UI strings, more help center articles, more release notes, and also more marketing content. And those updates as well are becoming more frequent, as there's the need for speed, the need to respond very quickly to changing customer needs or opportunities within the marketplace. And it can be very hard to keep up with that increase in the volume of content, and also how quickly that content needs to be updated. And that becomes even harder when you're dealing with that across multiple languages, and your translation process can be, if it is the case, is quite manual, with lots of copying and pasting and managing emails with the reviewers and so on. It's all very hard to keep up. The other challenge is around terminology. So you may have specific terminology for your product or your particular industry that you're working in, and it is essential that that terminology is correct to build that, to keep that trust and that loyalty within your customer base. It's not an option to have any mistranslations or inconsistencies around terminology, and that can often be a challenge. You've also got issues around consistency in the quality across different languages, particularly when you're working with internal reviewers who may be going at different speeds to review content and reviewing content to different degrees and so on. It's another issue. And then, of course, when you put that all together, on top of the fact that, as I said, you are dealing with time pressure and often cost pressures as well. There's a lot to deal with. So to help address those challenges, I'd first like to talk to you about a useful framework that helps to get that balance between the quality, the speed of response, and also, importantly, the cost. It works on the premise that not all content is created equal. Some content has more risk, more strategic value. Other content, it can be lower risk, and the quality expectations are lower. So if we take this framework and look at it in relation to this pyramid here, at the top of the pyramid, we have the content where accuracy and clarity is essential. Can be your UI strings, your navigation labels, anything related to compliance, or potentially very high profile marketing campaigns, for example. This is the type of content where any small error can really affect usability, can damage trust. And this is where a fully human-led approach is essential when you're looking at translation, where a professional translator, a translator that specializes in your industry, that understands the specific terminology, is handling the translations. In the middle layer, we have the content that is customer facing, potentially, and very important, but perhaps not as high risk as the content that sits at the top of the pyramid. This is where potentially an MTP, what we call machine translation with post-editing, may be a good solution, where the customized machine translation generates a first draft, and then the linguist, the professional linguist, reviews and edits that content in detail to ensure maximum accuracy, clarity, and consistency with approved terminology. So in that instance, you get the speed, but you also get enhanced quality from the linguist post-editing the content. At the bottom of the pyramid, we have MTAP, which we call machine translation with automated post-editing. So this is a fully AI-driven solution where the machine translation is fully customized. Then the post-editing is applied automatically. The linguistic expertise is very much a part of this as well, in the setup for the automated post-editing, in structuring the glossaries, the style guides, in developing the prompts, and that all then lays the groundwork for the automated post-editing that's performed on that content. This is you can think of this as machine translation that really does know your brand, rather than a kind of generic raw machine translation approach. And this is an area where we've built a lot of expertise, looking at how to really customize the machine translation very effectively for our clients, using their style, their tone of voice, and their terminology. So the key idea behind this brand is quite simple: understanding the content's value, risk and role, and then matching it to the appropriate localization approach and the appropriate level of kind of human input versus AI. And if you get this right, this is where you can save time, you can reduce costs, and keep the quality exactly where it needs to be, avoiding over translating and over investing where it's not necessarily needed. So now we're kind of clear on we've talked about the pyramid, we've talked about the categorization of the content and looking at the different approaches. Now I'd like to look at the technology that sort of supports all of that. And to start off with, we've picked out the kind of key tech here, and we'll go through this further along in the presentation. But firstly, connectors and integration. So connectors can be a big game changer for the whole localization process. Those connectors, they link your CMS, your kind of where your content sits, which could be systems like Contentful, Zendesk, Jira, or a custom CMS. They link that with the localization environment. So the process of sharing content with the team that handles the localization is automated. And we'll come to that in a bit. The second one is smart workflows. This is simply the logic that decides what happens to content when it enters the system. So you can set up a workflow, for example, for MTPE, machine translation with human post editing for particular types of content. And then you can set up a workflow for automated post editing for other types of content. But it's about establishing the right workflow for the right type of content. Thirdly, there's some invaluable tools around to handle terminology, something that we use extensively in handling localization for clients across the board, where terminology, as I said, is crucial. You may have specific terminology for your product, specific terminology for the industry that you're operating in. With a well constructed and well set up terminology database, everybody that's involved in the localization process will access that. So the linguists, the reviewers, and also obviously the customized machine translation that's set up for you, which makes sure that that terminology is handled and localized consistently throughout. Then we've got automated quality checks. This is in no way a replacement of human quality checks, but it adds that extra layer of protection. And those can be powered by large language models, and they will flag inconsistent terminology, incorrect formats, drift from a specifically defined tone of voice, or any other errors within the translation. And that just adds that extra layer of protection. And then finally, we have the two AI translation processes, which I mentioned earlier, with MTAP, the automated post-editing, the fully AI-driven solution, and then the MTPE, where we have the linguist that works with the content and edits and improves that. So these are all the tools available to remove some of the manual work involved in the localization process, to speed the localization process up, make it easier for you to manage and handle, to protect quality, and also, very importantly, to manage cost. I just wanted to touch on an example tech that brings a lot of this together. So Pronto is our self-service machine translation platform. It brings together the different workflows, the MTAP, the MTPE, terminology management, automated quality checks. It brings all those elements together. And within Pronto, you have access then to different workflows. So you have access to an MTAP workflow and then also an MTPE workflow. The idea with Pronto is very much a self-service solution. So you upload your content. Pronto handles content in all in a huge variety of file formats. And it can be customized, fully customized to your brand. There's also the option to have access to Pronto, which we call Pronto Standard, where it has not been customized to your brand, but the real value is in the customization, which can be set up for you and then accessed on a self-service basis. This is slightly different to the connectors, which we're going to come on to. So Pronto is your self-service solution for teams to go in and have the flexibility to use it as and when they want and upload files and get those back very, very quickly, and then decide if they do want to upgrade to more human input with MTPE. I'm now going to talk about the connectors. So this is where, as I mentioned earlier, connectors is a way your system is basically connected with your localization environment, and it automates the movement of content between the two. So it removes all the manual exporting, the copying and pasting, uploading, and so on. So I just thought it would be useful just to take you through the sort of example steps in that process, using, for example, a help center article that you may have published on your website, and you are now looking to have that localized into a variety of different languages. So the new content is identified. As soon as that English article goes live, the connector picks it up. You don't need to export anything or send an email. The connector simply sees it and pulls it into the localization system. And that content is then sent securely for translation to your localization provider. Translation can begin instantly using the automated post-editing solution. So that's the AI-driven solution, MTAP. And published on your website so that you have content there straight away, while in the background that content is then going through MTPE. It is being edited by a linguist in full, going through all the QA steps and all the additional steps in that process. But in the meantime, the key thing here is that there is content on your website using MTAP with the fully customized kind of machine translating automated post editing as an interim while your content is being post edited. Of course, there is the option to take out the MTAP step and go straight from the English to the MTP solution, but obviously the MTAP interim allows you to publish content, some content straight away. So the overall impact of this workflow is huge because it removes all the copying and pasting and means that you can respond and get every multilingual variation and set up to date as soon as possible. And you don't get that lag between publishing in English and publishing in other languages. And with the MTAP solution, you've got that degree of quality through the customization of the machine translation to your brand and terminology. So that's what the workflow looks like when everything is automated and running smoothly. But before we talk about cost savings, which I will talk about next, I just wanted to pause on something that I think is really important, and that's all about the human input into this process. So we've talked about the automation, we've talked about machine translation, quality, and the human input is crucial to deliver the quality that we know is so important, as we said, to build that trust, build that loyalty, and to deliver the best possible experience for your customers. Linguists bring the expertise that really shapes the output, and it makes it truly usable and truly relevant to your customers. So just outlining here kind of where linguists, how that linguistic expertise shows up in all the different elements that we've talked about. So firstly, the team that customizes your machine translation will and should include your localization engineers and your linguists, and those linguists should have extensive experience and specialist knowledge of the industry that you're in, the terminology of your industry, and so on. And they form part of that crucial team that customizes the translation engine and make sure that initial output from the machine translation is as good as it possibly can be. They also pre-edit the source content. There are elements that can be done, which we do as well with source content, which can be done automatically, but they're also very involved in that pre-editing to more linguistically to remove the ambiguity, simplify the text so that the AI produces the best possible initial version. After the AI has generated a translation, the linguists post-edit the output, they correct the errors, they add nuance, and they ensure the content is clear and accurate and natural. They also evaluate and iterate over time. So the output that's being produced as the localization process goes on and content is generated, it's very important that the quality of that output is constantly reviewed to understand where and how the setup can be improved. So the linguists will be potentially working with your reviewers to get their feedback on what they're seeing, if they would like any improvements made to terminology, for example, to glossaries, to style, and so on. And it's really important that they are constantly reviewing and improving the setup. And I think finally, it's really important, to talk about the role of the linguist in terms of the custodial role that they play in your brand. So they really do understand your product, your terminology, your users, and they will be working hard to make sure that your content resonates in the best possible way. Great. So moving on now to the savings, to the cost savings that AI can really deliver. It has the potential to reduce costs significantly, and when used really well, it has the potential to reduce costs and also it maintain quality. And what we see time and time again is that to really get the benefits, it's bringing those together. It's leveraging the tech and having that human input to maintain the quality. So with MTAP, it has the potential to reduce costs significantly on kind of standard human translation in the region of 75% or more. And obviously, there's considerable speed here, depending on the size of the amount of content that's being processed through the automated post-editing, that the response times are incredibly fast. And then with MTPE, again, even not at the same the greatest cost savings are with the MTAP, but that is a fully AI-driven solution. With MTP, it's a human, a linguist who is working on post-editing that content. Again, that delivers significant cost reductions and speed. But again, it's just to make that point again, with all of these cost savings, the quality comes very much from combining that with the linguistic expertise and the setup around the customization of the machine translation. So we've covered quite a lot here. I just wanted to bring that all together as to summarize kind of what we see as the kind of key takeaways when we're looking at how the translation technology can really help software and SaaS teams to localize more effectively. So firstly, we would highly recommend to categorize your content before you translate, and thinking about profile. There's different ways to categorize your content, and then working out the best approach for that type of content. We'd say definitely to automate wherever you can. So using the connectors to integrate your systems with the localization environment just allows that exchange of content to be fast and more efficient. MTAP can be a very valuable solution for high volumes of content needed at speed. And then the option to layer on MTP. We talked about potentially publishing initially with MTAP and then adding MTPE afterwards. The next point here was around terminology. This is very, very important, as I said, depending on the industry you're in, but I think across the board, it's really important to get that right, and to ensure that that terminology is applied consistently within the machine translation, where translation is handled by linguists, and also very importantly by your reviewers, and setting that up so everybody involved can access that kind of terminology database and line what they're doing with that. We'd also say it's really important to build localization very clearly into your processes, and think about it and plan for it very much early on rather than kind of post process, and that just allows you to stay on top of the translation requirements across all the different languages. And then finally is to test. We would definitely recommend testing workflows, doing samples, sample translations for MTAP solutions, MTP solutions, human translation, and seeing and getting feedback to see which solution works best for specific types of content. So that kind of brings us to the end of the presentation. As a kind of follow-up, just to say that, as I said in the last slide, we would highly recommend, when you're looking at those different localization processes and categorizing content, we would be very happy to do samples. We definitely recommend getting samples done, and we can also support in looking at how best to categorize your content. There's different criteria you can use. We can support with that. So very happy to provide any samples for you. We've done that with our clients, where we provide the raw MT, the MTAP solution, the MTPE, and then the human translation, and then we will show you how that translation has evolved with each different step to see where the improvements have been made or where the changes have been made, so you can get a really good understanding of what to expect for each level. And then secondly, very happy to talk through your current process, how you're managing localization right now, and look at where automation might help, how you're managing terminology, where MTAP MT would fit naturally within your processes. Very happy to do a review of that as well. So if you'd like to get in touch, please just drop me an email. My email address is there, and I'd be very happy to help. I am now going to stop sharing and just see. Very happy to ask any questions that you might have. I appreciate that's a lot of information I've shared with you. So if you do have any questions, anything else, anything you would like more information on, please do get in touch. I will follow up with the slides and recording. And yeah, please do get in touch. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.